Hello and welcome to another episode of SEO Presso podcast. My name is Björn Darko and today I'm speaking to Felix OEY about SEO automation. Felix is senior technical SEO analyst at Ladenzeile, used to be a search strategy advisor at SEO Laboratorium, also a senior SEO specialist at Mintus and senior SEO consultant at Searchmetrics, as well as some roles at Zalando and also Rocket Internet. When it comes to SEO automation, and I think maybe it's also a fairly new topic to the audience, can you elaborate a bit on what is SEO automation?
I mean, in basic terms, it's automating boring menial stuff that you do manually over and over again. So that's pretty much it. In terms of usage, you can do it pretty much. I think basic things is for instance, reporting, monitoring, crawling the site, rank tracking, and more advanced stuff that people do nowadays is to, maybe automate like internal linking, generating content on the page, etc.
And based on your experience, and what is it what you have been automating so far, and what do you like about SEO automation?
I think one of the first cases that we have in Ladenzeile is, for instance, to automate reporting, right? We have like around 13 countries, and like back in the day, so every Monday, each managers from the country is moving numbers from Google Search Console, for instance, or from Systrix to Google Sheet. Then all of these numbers are ported into dashboard, and people spend like 1, 2 to 3 hours every Monday just for the sake of reporting. Yeah, so you can imagine like 3 hours times 13 people time can be used for other more important stuff. And that's where this automation part comes into role, that we set up like some logic to automate like the numbers, pull everything into one big dashboard. And the idea is for the tools to run automatically by itself every Monday. I mean, the trickiest part is, from each of individual tool, they have their own API or technology. And the challenge is how to connect all of them together into one source. So technology wise, it totally depends on what kind of technology the tools are using. I mean, luckily, most of them are already having APIs. So you can use either PHP or Python, or even in our case, we simply use Google Script from Google Sheet. So all the numbers can be pulled directly to Google Sheet with the scheduler. Then as a source, we visualize them in Tableau. Some trickiest part is, for instance, for Google Search Console, some of the numbers is not available yet in the API. So, for instance, like the indexing number, like number of pages index or non-indexable pages, this kind of stuff, like Core Web Vitals, this kind of thing needs to be tricked in a sense that we also leveraging JavaScript framework such as Playwright or Puppeteer to be able to automatically, open a browser, grab the number, put it into Google Sheet up until later, maybe up until the API is available.
You're using a browser automation tool that essentially opens up a website, clicks on something, and then extracts the numbers, scrapes the numbers.
Exactly. So we can also do it headless, in a sense that, it doesn't need to open any browser. So there is no browser open. It's just running in the background. So that's the current possibilities that I can think of at the moment to...
How do you, you briefly touched on this. So reporting, of course, is a big, pain in the ass, especially if you have so many countries and so many sources that need, to be over checked. I remember back then in 2010 or so, every Monday was actually half a day was just pulling numbers, copying them into an Excel sheet, and then, trying to get an idea, an insight out of it. And most of the time there was also an error in the formulas, or numbers were in the wrong. So it was a huge effort. So for sure, automating dashboards, that's one of the most important use cases. And you touched on it, so using Python or Puppeteer. But can you elaborate a bit more on how you actually set it up from A to Z so that the listeners can get an idea what they need to take care of?
Yeah, so first of all, we need to check the possibilities of if API is available. So for instance, for Systrix, you have the Systrix API. So make sure you have a connection there, set up like what kind of info. First, you need to list what kind of information that you need to pull. So in Systrix, for instance, visibility for each country, either weekly or daily. Then, for instance, Search Console, you want to grab like clicks, impressions, etc. Also, maybe from other like internal tools that you have. Like in our case, we also grab some information from our own internal data, basically put them all together into one big dashboard or into one big source. Regarding a technology, I think at the moment for most of them, we're using, as I mentioned, Google Apps Script through Google Sheet. So there, I think the language is pretty similar to JavaScript in a sense that if you know JavaScript, more or less, it will be the same kind of language.
And that's essentially a plugin that you can use for Google Sheets, right?
Yeah, it's always there already. You just need to, I think, click edit script, then write a code or the function call from there. So you do the API call basically from there, send a request, get the data back, and then process those data according to the format that you need.
This is reporting, as you said, it's pretty straightforward and should be one of the greatest use cases that you have when it comes to automation, because it's a big pain in the ass. When we speak about other automation approaches,
one other use cases related to this, I think we also set up a regular like weekly crawl with Spotify tools, for instance. And nice thing about this tool, it provides API as well to be able to access almost all the information that you need. And one of the use cases that we use is to pull the duplicate title and description data from the crawl, and to be able to summarize them in the also through Google Sheet, summarize them in a list, and then automatically send an email to the department, need to handle this basically. So we did that also for all 13 countries, and every midweek after the crawl, we run a scheduler to be able to extract like list of URLs with the duplicate title issue, metadata issue, automatically send out the email to the relevant person that needs to tackle it. That's also like some, hours save from the week.
Especially if you have like a really large website like Ladenzeile, right, where you have thousands and even millions of subpages, right? You can't really control what you send into Google Index. Do they have enough items? How's the performance of those pages, etc. And we see actually a great way in automating the whole indexation process, determining which page needs to be in the index and which not, based on specific criteria. Can you elaborate a bit on how, indexation with, the scope of sites can be automated?
Yeah, so that's also an interesting use case since we're talking about, let's say, e-commerce, classifieds website, or any like large websites, user-generated content, etc., generating like millions and millions of URLs. And of course, not all of the URL is a good quality pages that has search volume that is useful for the user. So it's also one of the nice use case that we can, set certain threshold based on several criteria, like if page has search volume at all, if the page generating some traffic in the past, X month, if there is any revenue generated to the page at all, based on seasonality, for instance, and based on this criteria, the indexation can be processed, once a week or bi-weekly basis. We run all of this URL, crunch all of the numbers, and decide, okay, how many URL needs to go on index this week, how many URL needs to go off index based on this criteria. After all of this is set, then we also generate all the sitemap automatically, also image sitemaps and all other metrics that needed for Google to be able to crawl our like most important pages, and some of other interesting use cases as well that you can also even steer the internal linking. So for instance, main menu, the like similar categories, related categories. So that's something that you can also automate based on these criteria that you set for your own company.
Oh, super interesting. When we talk about automation, there rings also always these machine learning, which is a topic that it's being dragged through. I don't know how many years now within SEO, but the only approach that I have seen with machine learning in the sense of SEO is actually text generation, right? Like from your perspective, what is the biggest benefit of machine learning within SEO, and what kind of approach makes sense there?
I think same thing like the basic of automation itself, like for content that is not really, how do I say it, like not really need for like comprehensive content writing skill, etc. So for instance, for detailed pages, for a page where you always have like static information and just need a little bit of text, I don't know, maybe something like price trend for certain area, or like stock market charts, this kind of stuff, where you always have like static information. It gets updated every second or every minute, but then the text is kind of always the same. Or you can kind of really say, okay, this is going up or down, and based on that you can automate these kind of pages. I don't think there will be any added value when you use like human writer to write the text, because it will be more or less the same. I mean, I think you can, allocate the resources better on some more important pages in this case. Also, some interesting use cases I would say is for clustering, like grouping URLs based on certain topics. Of course, we already see this technology happening on, several like SEO tools to group like topics, to group related themes, etc. But I think one challenge that we're also looking for at the moment is to link related pages depending on category. Like you have, for instance, wine bottle page, and for people who's looking for wine, normally they also look for instance, wine glass or this corkscrew or even tabletop cloth or something like that. I think this is at the moment still a challenge for us to be able to link those pages, and I'm pretty sure there will be like also available libraries to be able to tackle this issue. But yeah, it's a nice thing to have, for not only for when you're talking about keyword grouping, you're only talking about top down internal linking, right? From like big categories down to like smaller categories. But there's also a need to do like cross linking between like different categories. I think that's also like another interesting topic.
Yeah, I think especially when we take the learning in machine learning, right, that implies that the machine is actually learning specific behavior or specific new data that it gets, that it adapts the process of the automation that it does. And especially for internal linking, I also believe it's quite good, because if you imagine, you have a specific set of pages, let's take wine again as an example, right? And you identify through this machine learning process what relevant other pages are always clicked from those users or visitors from these users. And you then implement, this as text or internal links or as smart filters or at filters itself, and always change the filters based on, the popularity of the next visited pages and so on and so forth. I think you can steer this internal linking automatically and with a smart approach, because it's constantly learning and taking new attributions and new data into account in order to display those links. And we don't need to bother actually to make sure that we change them on a seasonal basis and so on and so forth. It can happen automatically.
Yeah. Some website also, for instance, also leveraging the search bar, the search query. So those search query are also generating URLs. And like some of the pages that are now like for classifieds especially also provide this kind of box where they also list the most search query that is search when people are landing on those category or that page. That's also something that is also interesting. Let's say we still don't have the page chat generated, but then are searching for it, like for instance for, I don't know, for a search query that doesn't have any category or combination of two categories together, that it can be handled by the search query as well.
Yeah, I've also seen a very smart approach. It goes back to internal linking as well, but it's more like creating a graph of articles. This was a news site. It was like millions of articles, and in order to make sure or identify which articles are relevant to each other, we created this graph based on organizations, on brands, based on persons and stuff like that. So in this machine approach would, scan the articles, scan the titles and the articles and look for those specific names. Let's take Cristiano Ronaldo as one example. They would go through an article. If Juventus Turin was mentioned, then of course this has a relation to Cristiano Ronaldo or CL7 and so on and so forth. And in this way, we generated a whole graph of articles. And when you were clicking on just one keyword like Cristiano Ronaldo, you got a list of all the relevant articles that were mentioning him or were somehow related to him.
Yeah, exactly. I think that use cases is mostly used in media, right? In publishers, where you need to link or display like similar articles from the individual article page. So that kind of technology is often used, exactly as you mentioned. So scanning the entity of the article that appears on the article, brands, I don't know, timeline, and any other thing, that from there you pull like all related articles that is connected to that article. I think this kind of thing is still not used that much in e-commerce. Maybe because it's more complicated to detect pages that, doesn't have any like a lot of content like what we have in media or in publishing world.
I think we can see a very smart approach and a very sophisticated approach already with Google, right? I mean, we all know this phrasing of entity-based indexing, which is, not certain that it is real, but you can see that Google is already using those entities and a graph, that's connected to specific persons and entities. And with this, making sure that, relevant articles are being ranked and so on and so forth. There are, people like Olaf Kopp who, did a lot of research on this, and he could explain that much better than I can. But, there is already sophisticated approach. And I believe, if you have like this amount of information like Google, or you've been an e-commerce website, have a lot of, a big amount of pages, then it just makes sense to group them to relevancy in a graph like this. And this could be automated. Do you think with all those, machine learning approaches now, and, we are in super early stage, right? But just thinking ahead, all those tasks that we do within SEO, most of them can actually be automated or also being done by a machine, right? That, places specific titles, researches specific keywords, then places them in titles and headings, creating text and so on and so forth, crawling and so on and so forth. Do you think that, we will be at a certain point where, machines taking over SEO, so to speak, and SEO will die in the sense of being done by humankind?
I think in a sense that taking over fully, no. But taking over partially, I would say yes. But then on the other hand, all of this enables us to do more, and it empowers us to do more stuff that is more important and focus on more things that we're not even able to do before. So for instance, I know for a fact that more and more companies these days that is working for, a lot of websites, 50 to 70 websites, is only having 3 to 5 people these days in the team. And like most of the heavy lifting is done by all of these technologies. So in a sense that up to a certain point, all of these tasks will be handled by a machine. But then it is the role for the human who be able to, set up the logic, set everything up from the start. It's half. I wouldn't say it will be taken over fully by the machine. That's still impossible these days. But more and more menial stuff is taken care of.
Yeah, I think that it goes more on the trend and also that we see today, right? So SEOs are getting more into managerial roles, more cross-functional also, as we have the setup now with product, right? Where we more or less try to, merge SEO into the normal, work processes so that everybody is actually taking care of it and thinking about it. And I mean, to be honest, for most of the, recurring work that we do in SEO, like meta titles, keyword research, etc., I mean, I'm super happy if machines can take that over, right? Otherwise, you would have like interns or an agency who's doing it for you. I mean, to be honest, nobody's doing it by themselves, right? Thanks very much, Felix, for jumping on a podcast with me for this super interesting topic. And thank you for listening in and tuning in. We see and hear us next week again on SEO Presso Podcast. Ciao.